What's going on, DGen Nation? Back with another video. About to hop into another Best Ball Mania 4 draft. This is a special one today because this is going to be my 100th draft of the offseason in Best Ball Mania. Draft number 100. So this is a milestone here. I'm getting pretty close to the end of my drafts. I'm not going to max 150, but I'm going to get pretty close. I'm guessing about 110, 111, somewhere in that range. So only a handful of drafts left for me. If you're going to sign up for Underdog this last month before the season starts here, please use my promo code LarryBird617. It'll give you a $100 deposit match. You put in 100, Underdog will match 100. You'll have 200 in your account. Pretty typical start here. Jefferson, Chase, CMC, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, as standard as a start, as you're going to see. Eckler goes at 6, Kelsey, so I'm on the board, picking out of the 8 spot. I have not gotten much Bijan Robinson lately, so I will take him here. I've pretty well balanced my Diggs, AJ Brown, CD Lamb shares, so happy to take some Bijan here. I've leaned very heavy towards wide receiver and in Best Ball Mania specifically, but just in my drafts overall, I maxed the big board pretty much. So I've been much more of a early wide receiver, 0 RB guy than I was previously. Despite the fact that I did find success last year taking a running back in the first 2 rounds, I finished 30th in Best Ball Mania 3. And I started running back, but I think overall the advance rates were better for early receiver. And I mean, despite that, I still advanced over 30% of my teams to the fantasy playoffs on Underdog in Best Ball Mania. Well, I think that was across all tournaments. But I did pretty well to advance with that strategy, but I see the light now. I see why waiting on running back, especially this year. I mean, some of these RB1s are going in the 3rd round. So the landscape has changed. So I'm kind of adjusting and adapting to that. We see Jalen Hurts go to the AJ Brown team on the swing back around. That's an interesting selection there. Yeah, I just don't know how I click away from Davante Adams there at 17. I'm really wishing now that I had taken one of the receivers. I've been wanting to get Diggs and Davante on the same roster, and Diggs went all the way he slipped all the way to 11 right there. So that's crazy. I haven't seen a Diggs St. Brown start yet. Of all the times to go Bijan over Diggs is the one time that Davante Adams slips. But happy to get Davante there at 17. Not going to complain about that ever. So just a quick rundown. I went Bijan Robinson at 8 overall. Nick Chubb goes 9. He has pretty much cemented himself as a 1st-round pick. One of the biggest risers in recent weeks. AJ Brown 10, Stephon Diggs 11. Team at the turn goes Garrett Wilson, CD Lamb. So they don't go with the typical St. Brown Lamb week 17 stack that a lot of people have been getting. 15 goes Jalen Hurts to the AJ Brown team. Tony Pollard, interesting enough, goes there at 16 to pair with Nick Chubb. That's why Davante Adams slipped. I've never seen him slip to 17 in any of the drafts I've done. So that's interesting. I have seen the pairing of Bijan and Adams, and it's usually when Bijan slips to 10, 11, 12 in that area. Jalen Waddle, Mahomes, Olave, Devonta Smith, Saquon, T. Higgins, the team at the turn. We see the slip for Jonathan Taylor continuing. Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, which if Taylor comes back, that could be a deadly combination to go with Justin Jefferson. Mark Andrews, Ramondre, Josh Allen, Calvin Ridley, Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen, one of my least favorite selections there in the third round. And I'm on the clock. Lamar Jackson just went 31. I'm on the clock at 32. I've not been clicking much DK Metcalf, but I will take him here. Couple 4 picks past ADP. I was just hammering DK Metcalf last year when he was going in the 5th round, or in the 50s, I should say. He's gotten bumped up, and it's a little puzzling why he's gotten bumped up, with the addition of JSN. Plus, Lockett outscored him again last season, just on an overall points basis. So I know he has the tremendous touchdown upside. He's still very young, probably entering his prime season here. So I understand it in the one sense, but I have reservations in the other sense. So taking him in the 20s has not been a priority for me, but I'm okay taking him here. Need to bump up my exposure to him a little bit just so I don't get completely burned by him. But see if I can maybe build out a Seattle stack now that Kenneth Walker's price has come down. Charbonnet's price should dip a bit with the recent injury news to the both of them. Maybe I could grab Geno Smith, who I don't have a ton of either. So leave myself open for some options here. I wonder if it would be smart to take Najee if he does not get sniped here to build in the week 17 correlation. Team goes Joe Burrow. I can also take Fields to pair with Bijan. Yeah, I'm gonna go a different route here. I'm gonna go Najee since he's past ADP. I'm gonna go more towards a Seattle Pittsburgh stack than I would, because I have a few Atlanta and Chicago week 17 stacks. So I'll go Najee there. Love those two running backs. I could wait until the 7th, 8th, 9th, somewhere in that area to take another running back. Try and grab either JSN or Lockett on the swing back around. Whichever one falls to me, and one of them should, according to ADP. Let me go back to the board. Yeah, so my next pick is 56. JSN has an ADP of 61 and Lockett 63. So both should technically be there. If one gets sniped, I'm pretty much guaranteed the other, but you never know. So I went DK Metcalf 32. After DK Metcalf goes Jahmyr Gibbs, Deebo Samuel, Breece Hall. The team at the turn goes Joe Mixon, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, 36 and 37. Not a combination I've seen. Mixon obviously going early there. It's funny because Mixon has been a roller coaster all offseason. I got him a couple times in the big board, which the big board was the tournament that they had open pre-draft. So you were kind of doing a lot of guessing there as to where people would land. And during that time, the news came out about Mixon and a possible suspension. So I got him a couple times in the 9th round. And when I look at those teams, the fact that he's risen back into like the 4th, 5th round makes me feel really good about those teams. But, I don't think he's a guaranteed smash, and I don't feel great about him at 37. Don't really feel great about him in the fourth, fifth. I think he could fall into dead zone territory if he declines and starts to split work similar to what he did towards the end of last year with P. Ryan. So Mixon have not been getting much of him. I don't have much of the Cincinnati KC game, so I don't know if that's going to come back to bite me. It's just the way it's turned out. Have not gotten a lot of Jamar Chase exposure because of my draft position. I think I only have maybe two. I would say like 3 or 4 number 2 picks. And a couple times when I did have number 2, Chase got taken first, so I didn't really have any option to take him. So it's pretty specific draft spot you need to get Chase. You need to either get 1 or 2, and he never usually slips past that. So Mixon there at 37. After Mixon, Amari Cooper, Mike Williams, Joe Burrow. I took Najee Harris at 41 to kind of hopefully build out this Seattle-Pittsburgh stack. Jerry Jeudy goes after Najee at 42. Then Christian Watson, Drake London, Terry McLaurin, Brandon Ayuk, Justin Fields. Team at the turn goes Hopkins and Kirk. Team out of the 1 spot. And then the team out of the 2 spot does get the Justin Fields, DJ Moore combo. That's a really nice team. They started out with Chase and Higgins, grabbed Mark Andrews for the elite tight end, and then got their quarterback and their third receiver. So going 0 RB, but I like their builds. I'll come back to those last few selections. I'm on the board. What makes sense here? I think JSN or Lockett makes more sense than going Kenneth Walker here. So I will go JSN. If Walker falls back to me, you never want to take a falling guy right at ADP. And I guess what's his ADP now? So 52.9, and basically 53. I was at 56 there. So it would have still been past ADP, but you never really want to reach for a falling guy. I want to hope that he comes back to me here on at 65. And if he does, I'll take him there. He doesn't. That's okay. I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed here that Lockett will fall to me. And a lot of times I don't feel great about taking 3 receivers on the same team, but this is one of the cases where I have no qualms about that. I'm fine taking Metcalf, JSN, Lockett. I think they all can spike in different weeks. I think they could all spike in the same week. So that's a combination I don't have yet, is getting all 3 of them. So I was at DJ Moore there at 50. After DJ Moore, Aaron Jones went at 51. TJ Hawkinson, Justin Herbert, Alexander Madison, Deontay Johnson. I picked JSN at 56. And then we see Hollywood Brown, Travis Etienne, Kenneth Walker goes there at 59. Team at the wraparound out of the 12 spot went Kittle, Trevor Lawrence, and Chris Godwin, 62, Gabe Davis, 63. So Gabe Davis, a little ahead of ADP there. Oh. So I was on deck, got sniped on Lockett. That's unfortunate, but it might have been overkill, maybe. I don't think it was. I have no problem doing it, but could have been a little bit of overkill if I went with Lockett there as well. So I'll go Kyle Pitts. I have Bijan. I could still build out a Atlanta stack. Maybe grab Ritter in the last couple rounds, because I'm looking at Geno as well. So that might be a 3 quarterback. That might be a Pickett, Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ritter team. As good as Geno was last year, I don't know if I think he's the type of QB that you build out a 3 quarterback build with. As much as the data says 3 QB is not the way to go in terms of advance rate, but it does make sense in certain scenarios. So and I've just taken so much Mike Evans in that range right there. Let's look at the board just to show you what I'm talking about. I went Pitts there at 65, which is right around his ADP. I think his ADP is 68. So I've clicked a ton of Michael Pittman and I've clicked a ton of Mike Evans in that range. And what I really want to do for these next 10 to 12 drafts is get more Jahan Dotson, because I feel like that's a guy I've consistently passed on in that range. I only have, out of 100 drafts now, I'd probably say I have 5 or 6 shares of Dotson. And it's not on purpose. I like Mike Evans so much, and I feel like he falls to such a beautiful range right there. But I think I'm overlooking a guy like Dotson, a guy like George Pickens, who could have been another option there for me. So I have to start mixing up my exposure to those receivers. I have a decent amount of Addison, and that speeding 140 miles an hour, that actually scares me more than maybe it does for most people. I don't think he'll get any sort of a suspension out of it for this season, but just the mentality to be racing at 140 miles an hour after you saw a guy like Henry Ruggs and what that did to him. I mean, there's just never a scenario where you should be going 140 on, main roads where there's pedestrian. I don't want to sound like a goody two shoes here, but it's like, come on, dude. Fucking the speed limit's 65 and you're doing 140. It's just, you're putting your life on the line. You're putting other people's life at risk. And if he's doing shit like that, I don't think he has the best head on his shoulders. So he does scare me a little bit, but for sure the point still stands. Dotson, guy I'm looking for. And I have enough Pitts at this point, but I think he made sense with this build. I hate getting shut out at tight end too. So I'm back on the clock here. The wrap back around. Traylon has slipped to such a beautiful range. Yeah, I think there's a tier break there with Traylon Burks. I think Hopkins signing was the best thing that could have happened for him, and for me to up my exposure to him. That's just such a guy with so much upside slipping into the 80s. I still think he's the number one on that team. I think Hopkins might be more of a goal line threat, but I think Traylon is the number one on that team. And I think that will show over the course of 17 games. We saw how these older receivers on the downside of their career have performed in Tennessee. And I'm not saying that's going to be exactly the case here with Hopkins. I think he is more in the tank than Julio Jones did and some of the other guys that went there. And obviously, not all of them played under Mike Vrabel either, some of the guys that get brought up, but I think Burks is the emerging talent, and Hopkins is obviously heading towards the tail end of his career, maybe, 1 or 2 good seasons left. So what makes sense here? I don't have much Bateman. I don't have much Michael Thomas, but how much of them do I really want? I'm going to go Kamara here. I think he just still has that elite upside. And I just think as a running back 3 in the 90s, he's the definition of a best ball player. Say he gets the 6-game suspension. You're talking about 11 games of Kamara at pick 90. A little bit earlier in draft season, he was going even higher, but now that he settled this case, he hasn't shot up as much as I thought he would. So I like him a lot right there in that range. Michael Thomas is not a comfortable click for me ever. Bateman scares me with the foot. And I think if you're talking about James Conner, Rashad White, Alvin Kamara, I think they're all similar. I think Rashad White has the least competition. So if you factor that in with the suspension of Kamara, almost guaranteed. Rashad White, I'd probably prefer in a vacuum, but I don't think Rashad White has doesn't have that crazy upside potential of Kamara. And you could say the play of Kamara has declined, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but I think the quarterback play was so bad and just did not match up with Kamara's style last year. So I think they get back to what works a little bit and getting him out in open space. And Carr is much more of a either throws it deep or dumps it down. I don't think he's exactly cut from that Jameis Winston cloth where he's, kind of never really looking at the running backs. He's either, he has his mind made up. He's throwing downfield, and Kamara just became much more of just a standard, between the tackles running back. And that's not where he's going to do his damage. So I think if the coaching staff is smart and Dennis Allen, I mean, he coached under Sean Payton for, a couple decades. So should he recognize that and make the adjustment? You would hope so. You would really hope so. But I'm going to make the bet that Kamara bounces back in a big way. Let's go back to the board here. So I went Pitts at 65, Treylon Burks at 80, Alvin Kamara at 89. It's wrapping back around to me here. So this is where it gets a bit dicey because Geno Smith's ADP is 115. I pick at 113. So there's a lot of quarterbacks on the board, but that can change in an instant. Between this next wraparound, Dak, Kirk, and Daniel Jones could all go, and then Geno sitting at the top of the board. Someone's more likely to take him. Don't like the receivers in this range. So I will go Charbonnet as much as I like Dalvin Cook more. The out indefinitely, of course, it scares me, but I don't think he's going to be out for the season. I have no insider knowledge. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't think he's out for the season. So could be a little overblown. The injury, Pete Carroll likes to kind of make odd statements at different times. So further ties in with my Seattle bet. It's gonna not be as pretty if I don't get Geno Smith here on the wrap back around. As you see Dak Prescott go there, and this is the range where people are taking quarterbacks. This team right here at the turn has Trevor Lawrence. So I'm hoping that they don't go quarterback. If they don't, I don't see these next three teams in a row all going quarterback, but you never know. And actually, this team picking right before me did snipe me on Lockett. So do they go Geno here? They do have Burrow, but crazier things have happened. Then you see Daniel Jones go right there too. So this is going to be a sweat right here, this pick. And I think he's probably taking a peek at my roster and saying, all right, he's got Metcalf, he's got Charbonnet, but he doesn't. He goes Juju, thankfully. And I'm able to get my guy. Now, I'm happy to take both Pickett and Ritter. The only issue is that I don't have anybody aside from Najee. I could grab Warren, but you're talking about none of his actual, wide receivers or tight ends. Fryermuth is obviously gone at this point as well. Oh, he's not. He's actually still on the board. Oh, that would have been a nice pick. And if I could have maybe taken Fryermuth right there and then pushed it for Geno, that might have been the move. But we see the quarterbacks are going right here. So I don't think Geno would have lasted. People are just crazy like that. They see someone at the top of the board, and you never know if you're going to get an auto drafter, but also people will take guys unstacked, people who aren't disciplined drafters, people who are inexperienced drafters. They'll grab somebody like that unstacked. So Fryermuth does go there. Kind of kicking myself now because that would have been really nice if I could have just went Fryermuth there, been done at tight end and grabbed Kenny Pickett and kind of maybe passed on Geno, because it's not out of the question that Pickett has a better Week 17 game than Geno. Geno could technically, have throw a couple touchdowns to JSN to Metcalf, but like Metcalf and JSN could have nice games, and maybe Walker runs it in or Charbonnet runs it in, and Geno doesn't get those points, So it's like Metcalf and JSN have nice games, but in the end, Pickett has the better Week 17 game. So it's if you have one of the two quarterbacks in the game, you're kind of hoping that they are the higher scorer of the two, and that's how it shakes out. So I could have went that path and maybe went Fryermuth there. That's my mistake for not kind of browsing around, but I don't know. I would have. It would have been tough for me not to click Geno with the bet I've made on Seattle. So Fryermuth is one of the best values there, though, in the 10th round for sure. But able to get two Seahawks in the last two rounds. Charbonnet 104, Geno Smith 113. After I went Geno, Damian Harris, Kirk Cousins, Pat Fryermuth, Devin A-Chain, Aaron Rodgers goes 118. So you see, this is the range where people are scooping up their quarterbacks. Some getting their second, some getting their first, like me. So I think the timing was right to take Geno. Brian Robinson 119. The team at the turn goes Greg Dulcich, Samaje Perine, 120 and 121. Khalil Herbert, Michael Gallup. I'm 4 picks away. So what makes sense here? Right now I'm at a 1-4-4-1. Quarterback Geno Smith. Running backs Bijan Robinson, Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, Zach Charbonnet. Wide receiver Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, JSN, Treylon Burks, Kyle Pitts at tight end. It's a beautifully balanced team right now. I think running back is good for the foreseeable future. I think hammering home wide receiver is the smart thing to do. But also don't love the receivers in this range whatsoever. So what makes the most sense here? I guess I'll go Romeo Dobbs. I don't have much of him. I mean, not that he correlates with anything right now, but not everything is about correlation. I think he should be at worst a wide receiver 3, at best, a decent wide receiver 2. depending on Jaden Reed and how he fares. So I'm cool taking a stab there at Romeo Dobbs. Played pretty well. Packers are really good at developing receivers, so a little bit past ADP. Cool, just taking a stab at him. Trying to see what makes sense here for the wrap back around. I have Kamara, and I was thinking if I went with a few more of the New Orleans pieces, would Derek Carr make sense? But I don't think there's a big gap between Derek Carr and Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett just makes more sense for my build. So Jalen Warren would have been an option there, but I don't know if I necessarily needed both Najee and Jalen Warren. I'm a big Najee guy, so if I'm gonna make a play, if I'm gonna take a stand and have a player take, I'm making that bet with Najee, so I'm cool riding with that. To me, like when I look at this board here of receivers, I think Alec Pierce is just in a tier well above any of these guys. I'll go Algier because he gives me a little bit more of that Atlanta stack if I want to grab Ritter. So I have both of the running backs, and I don't know. It's tough to make the case there for Algier when I just made the case against Jalen Warren, especially since Jalen Warren has a little bit more of the pass catching chops than Najee. But my reasoning is that if Najee goes down, I don't think Jalen Warren handles a full workload like that. Whereas if Bijan goes down, Tyler Algier is going to be a stud. He looked good enough in his rookie year, put up 1,000 yards. It wasn't the most spectacular thing I've ever seen, but just a very solid player. And I think year two, running behind a good offensive line with improved weapons and quarterback play, I think Bijan goes down, Algier is a stud. So that's the thinking behind that. Building out an Atlanta stack. So I think he made sense there. I could stop at running back too at the 5. And my pick would have been Alec Pierce. I've just been hammering him in this range. So if I could wait to the swing back around and get him, like that's all the better. Because I think running back starts to tail a bit. I could have went Mooney too. Mooney would have tied in with the Atlanta bet, but he went pretty far after ADP there. Yeah, he went 14 picks after ADP to that team. So that would have been a nice selection as well. I just don't know how pass heavy the Bears are going to be. I think it might be the DJ Moore, Cole Kmet show as far as pass catchers, and I think Mooney might get the scraps of whatever's left over. So I have him on some of my Bears builds, but I don't love him. A lot of Justin Fields running, a lot of running the ball, and then I think the passing game goes through DJ Moore first and foremost, and then secondarily Kmet. So this is a range where a lot of these rookies are going. You see, I took out Tank Bigsby went right after my selection of Algier at 138. Jonathan Mingo goes there at 145. Two of the team at the turn. Marvin Mims goes right there. Another high upside guy with the Tim Patrick and KJ Hamlin news. The Broncos wide receiving core just got really thin all of a sudden. So the Broncos pass catchers should definitely get a boost with that news. and I'm 3 picks away here. I'm at a 1.551 right now. So my plan here, that's the nice thing about New Orleans, and it's similar to like the Patriots, is that you can get a lot of their pieces late. You can get Taysom Hill, Jawan Johnson, Rashid Shaheed. Pretty much other than Olave, you can get all their pieces late. So I do like teams like that when you're building out a stack where you have a ton of options to turn to late. But also, I mean, possibly they're late for a reason because they don't have the juice and the upside to really carry a fantasy roster. So, and I really like Kendre Miller here. But I had my eyes on Pierce. He's right at the top of ADP. So him as my sixth receiver, I've just been hammering him at the 154 ADP. And he's stuck pretty much in that range, within 10 picks or so of that range. And for me, that's a no-brainer. I think he's one of the breakout stars of this season. It's tough to take Pickett. I'm looking at Pickett at my next wraparound, but it's tough to take him with all those quarterbacks sitting on the board ahead of him. But sometimes you just got to go and get your guys, do what makes sense. I think Noah Fant is another good option for this team with the Seattle bet. Feel actually a little better about taking him. The fact that I didn't get Lockett, because I think it could be a tad bit of overkill if I did get Lockett to have all three receivers, Charbonnet, Gino, and Fant. So we'll see. Darnell Washington's another option for me. Allen Robinson to build out that Steelers bet a little bit more. Do I feel great about either of those guys? No. I saw Darnell Washington running some routes in training camp, and he does look like a slow, kind of lumbering guy. That he didn't look that way at Georgia, like he was, running over people and just completely blowing people up. But could he be a red zone threat? Yeah, I think so. Some reason my internet just kind of crapped out right there. I was working on my phone, but that's why I keep the phone next to me too, just in case. And I've gotten burned a couple times with the shoddy internet. If I was out in somewhere and the internet wasn't the greatest, you always got to try and utilize your queue. I've been caught a couple times not queuing guys and getting auto drafted occasionally. So even if you're, it seems like your internet's not working, you always want to hit that star there and get the guy you want up in the queue. So this team's gone pretty much according to plan for me. I would say the Lockett pick was a bit of a snipe, but that's debatable as to whether that was overkill, as I said, with just going too heavy on Seattle. There's only they might be the only team in football that has three receiver set that I would take all together on a fantasy team. Like I'm trying to think if I'm overlooking somebody. Maybe the Raiders. I have a couple Raiders teams with Adams, Renfro, and Myers. Not that the other two were on the tier of Adams, but definitely all draftable, solid guys. Um, I'm sure somebody in the comments, if they see this, there's probably an obvious team that I'm missing out on that's pretty stacked at receiver at all three spots. Maybe the Vikings. I don't know. I don't know if Osborne's in that category. If I get him, I get him. If I don't, I really don't care. But trying to envision here what makes sense for these last four rounds. I think Ritter, if he makes it to the last round, that's a good selection. But if I don't get him, I'm okay sticking at the two. I'm good at running back. I don't need any more running backs. I need a second tight end for sure. Hunter Henry has looked good in training camp again. I've been hammering him in the last round. The problem is this group of guys here are all pretty much last round selections, and I'm here in the 15th round. So do I take one more receiver, I guess, that I like, and then kind of pick through the litter right there with those guys I have in the queue? I think that makes the most sense. A little more John Mechie exposure. I have out of this group right here, the names that I've clicked the most are by far Hunter Renfro and Tyquan Thornton. I have almost 40% Renfro. So I have to kind of chill on that as much as I love him in this range. I have to kind of chill on that a little bit and mix it up. I wasn't taking Mechie early in the offseason because of the extreme uncertainty of his status. So now that there's some positive reports, I'm cool taking him here. I do wonder, does he have a similar skill set to um does he have a similar skill set to Tank Dell? And I think Tank Dell is just more of like an explosive guy. I think Mechie is a possession receiver with upside, but I think Tank Dell reminds me more of like a Rondell Moore with a just the extreme athleticism, like a Tutu Atwell, but a bit of a sharper route runner. So even though I think they're on paper maybe profile similar, I don't think they're a similar player. I don't think they're exactly the same. I'm sure they have some similarities, but I don't think they're exactly the same. So I don't really worry about them competing for one spot. Um, Interesting to see how that wide receiver core will shake out though. So what's the move here? This is 185 overall. I'm just going to continue to take my guy. I love Renfro. And if I can get him here basically for free, then I'm going to take him. So I think interesting that they're putting Allen Robinson in the slot. I think if someone could get the most out of him, it would be like a Mike Tomlin and playing as a third receiver, a definitive third receiver. Not a high end two like he was on the expected to be on the Rams, or basically a one his last year on Chicago, last few years on Chicago, but they didn't have much around him when he really struggled on Chicago. So interesting to see that they're kind of moving him around and he's a definitive third receiver. He does interest me, but I think I might just pass on him here. Yeah, I don't know. I don't ever see him rebounding like the note says there. I think Tomlin could get the most out of him, but in a run heavy offense with two stud receivers, I don't know what kind of upside he really has. So I think the move is to go Ritter and Fant, or just go with Fant and Hunter Henry and skip Ritter altogether. Because in reality, all I really have is Bijan and Pitts. Not really sure how Ritter will be with throwing to the running backs. He is a scrambler. So a lot of times the scramblers are not the best dump off guys. So does that limit the catchability of a Bijan to the Ritter to Bijan touchdown that you see a lot of times with Justin Herbert to Eckler, that kind of a thing where he dumps it off 5 yards and the running back takes it 15 yards, 20 yards to the house. Both players get points. Like, how much of that do you see with Ritter? I'm not really sure, to be quite honest. So would it make more sense to go two tight ends for the weeks that Kyle Pitts struggles? But Hunter Henry goes there, so I think that makes the decision easier for me. Should Darnell Washington even be an option for me? I don't know. I'd have to get some more camp reports from him, but the clips I saw, and it's not always good to just go by clips, but from what I saw, I didn't love what I saw. I think he'd strictly be a blocker and a red zone guy, and you're praying for a touchdown. I think he's a pray for a touchdown type of guy. And I could be wrong, but that's the sense I got with a really good tight end in front of him and Freiermuth. I think it could be a while before Washington hits his stride, a couple years from now, kind of a thing. My dilemma here is Noah Fant is far from a sure thing. And if Kyle Pitts has any sort of an injury, what am I left with? I'm left with Noah Fant, who is also an injury prone guy. So I think I go with the third tight end for this build. I think the third tight end helps me more than Desmond Ritter. So trying to really decide. Let me go back to I haven't gone to the board in a bit. I apologize. Quick rundown of my last 5 picks. So I went Alec Pierce at 152, Kenny Pickett at the wrap back around 161, John Mechie 176, Hunter Renfro 185, and then Noah Fant right there at 200 on the board. So what makes sense here at tight end? Out of this list, I really like Michael Mayer. I think he is the most immediate impact and would be on the field every down, despite the fact that they do have Austin Hooper. I think the dude is just so talented. So I really like him a lot. I think there will be a place and a time to take Darnell Washington, possibly, if I do another Steelers build. I might throw him in there just to get unique, but I don't know if this was the appropriate time. So I'm cool taking Mayer there. And I already have Renfro and Devontae Adams. So that does help me build out a little mini Las Vegas stack. So see how these last couple picks go. I do like to watch the last few picks. I like this. I like to see. I like to see the teams that get unique, that kind of take a shot. Obviously, it's a huge field tournament, so the teams that have been drafting the quote unquote fourth running back for the Chiefs, similar to as how Isaiah Pacheco was last year, came on late in draft season during training camp. So the guys like that, the Kenny McIntosh, who we saw go right there at 211, who is a rookie that the Seahawks have taken. Um, they're just going out on a limb and saying, well, if the injuries to Walker and Charbonnet are serious, McIntosh caught some decent draft capital. He's a pretty good player in college. So let me take a shot. Let me take a flyer. So I do like picks like that. Deion Jackson at 208 there, backing up Jonathan Taylor. I did take Evan Hull, who Indy drafted, I think, in the fourth round. I took a couple of shares of him on the big board. So guys like that. In a 20-round draft, it's much more feasible to take somebody like that, to take a flyer, a shot in the dark, than it is in the 18 rounds, which is how many rounds there are in BestBall Mania. So you can get a little more creative in a 20-round draft, but I think the more skilled drafters are drafting here in BestBall Mania. So quick rundown of the team: 2-5-8-3 quarterbacks, Geno Smith, Kenny Pickett. On paper might not be the sexiest two names, but I think both vastly underrated. Geno is really set up for success, and I think Pickett has rushing ability with upside going into next year. Running backs really strong: Bijan Robinson, Najee Harris, Alvin Kamara, Zach Charbonnet, Tyler Algier. Really a big proponent of 5 running backs. I think that's the sweet spot if you can get 5 good ones. Really load up a receiver. So my receivers are Devontae Adams, DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Treylon Burks, Romeo Doubs, Alec Pierce, John Mechie, Hunter Renfrow. And at tight end, we have Kyle Pitts, Noah Fant, Michael Mayer. Solid team. Nothing I'm over the moon about, but I think very solid. Good week 17 correlation and pretty well structured. So if you enjoyed today's video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave me a like, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and most importantly, subscribe, just so you see my videos when they get posted, and just shows me that you're really enjoying the content, which means a lot to me. So that's going to do it for this video. I will talk to you guys soon. DGen Nation out.